Hello and welcome everybody to another Lightroom in-depth tutorial. In this video I'm gonna take this raw file of the Nice Point lighthouse and I'm gonna turn it into a photo like this while showing you every single slider, every single tool and every single technique that I use to get this look from the very start to the finished and fully edited picture. Did you ever want to create your own professional photography website to display your pictures in a professional manner beyond just 500px and Flickr? Well, why don't you do so with SmugMug? Because with SmugMug you can create your own professional photography website and portfolio from as low as $3 a month. Check out the link in the description to get your 14-day free trial today. And speaking of websites, you can actually download this unedited picture from my website so you can edit along with me. Now, it's not the full resolution and it's just a JPEG file, but you're gonna get really close to what I'm going to do. And you also can, play around with it some more and just check out different looks for yourself. So after this very long intro, let's actually get started with the editing, and the first thing I'm gonna do is bring down the highlights just to retrieve all of this detail in the sky. And usually I would also bring up the shadows just to retrieve all of the shadow detail as well. However, because this picture is pretty darkish, it has kind of an almost stormy mood, I might actually go into the minus shadows here and make everything a little bit more darkish and a little bit more mysterious. I'm also gonna add a bit of contrast here just to give that extra punch in the picture and also to make some stuff a bit darker. And the whites, I always like to bring up the whites to give additional dynamic. And what you can do here is hold down the Alt key and just bring that slider to the right and stop before you see any other colors than black, because if you see anything else than black, that means this portion in the sky or wherever in the picture is completely clipped and there is absolutely no detail left. So you just want to make sure that you stop before anything clips. And you see the difference from before to after. Very, very big difference, adds a ton of dynamic and really changes your picture quite a bit. And with the blacks you can either go into the minus or into the plus, both work depending on the actual picture, but here I think I'm just gonna add a little bit of minus blacks. So if we look at the picture from before to after, you see it's already a bit more mysterious, a bit more punchy, but of course we're nowhere near done yet. Then clarity is also a very important slider. I think I'm just gonna add a bit in this case. That looks pretty good. And I was actually thinking about just going a bit into the plus exposure because the picture is a little bit dark how it is, but that would almost ruin this kind of stormy, mysterious look that I really like here. So I'm actually just gonna leave that at 0 as well. The temperature slider though, you just want to play around with that one. And the most important thing that I can say here, don't really go for a neutral white tone, because at the end you're editing a landscape picture, so just go with whatever you like best. It doesn't have to be accurate at all. I think I might even go with a kind of a bluish look for now, and maybe add some warmth in the highlights of the split toning. But for now I really do like this look quite a bit. Then tint I think is just fine how it is. And lastly we would have the vibrance and saturation slider down here. If you want to add any of these, I would definitely suggest you to go first of all with the vibrance because it adds color more subtle. Although you can also make a mixture between saturation and vibrance, but in this particular picture I think I'm not gonna add anything here because I do like this very non-vibrant look. Once again, works really well with this kind of stormy and mysterious overall mood. Before I actually go into the tonal curve, let me grab a spot removal tool and just get rid of this lens spot right here that already did the job. And I'm also gonna go down to the lens corrections here, enable lens corrections, and just choose my lens because there was quite a bit of a distortion here on the horizon, so I just wanted to get rid of that. right away, and that definitely looks a lot better. Maybe the picture is also a little bit crooked, so let's just fix that as well. It's usually a thing that I do more towards the end of the whole edit, but right here it was really quite severe, so I just wanted to fix that right away. So already, let's just once again take a comparison from before to after. Already a lot more punchy, a lot more interesting. Then down here at the tonal curve, I just want to bring up the highlight slider a little bit to add some additional interest and some additional dynamic in the sky here from before to after. Really a very subtle difference, but it is a lot better. Then the rest of these sliders, I would just suggest you to move them around because I don't really have a set tactic for them. It's really very different from picture to picture. But generally speaking, they don't have too big of an impact. The main thing that you want to look out for here is definitely the highlight slider. So here's before the tonal curve, here's after, just a little bit more interesting. Then down here we would have the HSL tool, although I'm gonna leave that out because it has such a small impact to your actual color that it's oftentimes not even worth the time. Although split toning is completely different because even in very kind of neutral colored picture like this one, you really can add some additional interest in terms of color with split toning. And the great thing about split toning is that you have a highlight and a shadow slider, and the highlights will just add more colors in the bright parts of your picture than in the shadow parts. So the thing that you can do here is of course just add color more naturally, because naturally the color is coming from the highlight, so that way you kind of get a more organic look. But you can also get one color in the highlights and get another color in the shadows, and that way create differentiation. But I'm just gonna check out all of the colors here in the highlights tab first. And I don't really want to add any blues, and the rest also doesn't really work that well. So I think I'm just gonna go with a bit of orange and bring down the saturation to just a little bit so it doesn't overpower the picture, but it just gives a little hint of color. Maybe even a little bit of a different yellow hue right here. And from before to after, you see especially the sky is a little bit more pleasant in my opinion, but not the biggest difference. I'm also gonna go into the shadows regardless and see if there's any color that I want to change. For example, this is also kind of a cool look in my opinion, with quite a lot of blues in the shadows, but not what I want to go for here. So yeah, at the end I don't think there's really anything I want to do with the shadows, so I'm just gonna leave them at 0 and go down to the detail tool. And the detail tool is very important. Even if you don't print your picture, if you just upload it online, it can really make a difference and make your picture look a lot more crisp and a lot more clean. So for that, you definitely want to make sure that you zoom in 1:1 so you actually see what you do. I shot this picture with a Canon 18-55 kit lens, so not the sharpest lens in the world, but regardless of your lens, even if you have a very expensive L lens for example, just adding a bit of sharpness, anywhere from 40 to maybe even 70, can really benefit your overall appearance of your picture. Here I think I'm gonna go with around 60, and once you've added sharpening, it's very important that you zoom out and bring the masking slider to the right while holding down the Alt key, and that way you will get a sharpening mask, and everything that is white is going to be sharpened and everything that is black is not going to be sharpened. So the reason why you want to bring the masking to the right is so you don't sharpen any of the non-textured surfaces such as the sky or the water for example, because that would just introduce noise. Now you don't have to get it perfect, but just make sure that your picture doesn't look anything like this. So I think that actually works quite well here, and even if I zoom in here and show you from the default amount of sharpening to after, it's quite a bit of a difference, and it definitely adds a lot of crispness. You probably have to watch it in 1080p though to actually see the difference on the video. So then the next thing that we would have here is noise reduction, and that way you can get rid of noise, but I really don't like this slider because it also gets rid of really a lot of the texture and all of the sharpening in your photo. So I would suggest you to not add any noise reduction unless you absolutely have to. So in this picture there's really just a little bit of noise, and I much rather have that than the much less sharpness than I would get with the noise reduction. So once again, really don't add anything unless you absolutely have to. But the color slider is a thing that I really do like, and I would definitely suggest you to bring that to the right, anywhere from 80 to even 100. And what this will do is get rid of your purple and green sensor noise on the photo. Even if you shoot at an ISO of maybe 100, you will get that purple and green sensor noise, and the thing is, you don't even see that you have any unless you see the direct comparison from before to after. And especially in the green tones and in the shadows, you see everything looks so much cleaner compared from before to after. So really a very valuable slider. Definitely take advantage of that. And once again, it doesn't have any bad impact on the overall picture. If you see here, if I move around the slider, the color changes not at all. It really just removes this purple and green sensor noise. The next in row would be effects, and here you can add additional vignetting, which can oftentimes help to create additional interest towards the center, but also to kind of set a more dramatic mood in your picture. So definitely be sure to try out the vignetting in your photo. And at the end, if you want to stick with it or not is up to you, but in quite a lot of the pictures I do use it, and in this photo as well. I think around -14 works quite well, maybe even bring the midpoint a bit more towards the center. And if you think that the whole vignetting thing is a bit too harsh, you can always bring the feather to the right so it gives an even softer edge. So here's before the vignetting, here's after, definitely sets the mood and once again adds a bit more attention towards the center. Then the last tool you would have in the global adjustments would be camera calibration, and you have the primary color sliders which you can use to change your primary colors. And you know, they have a bit of a bigger impact than the HSL tool, but at the end it's still very small, and I think I'm just gonna skip them in this video as well to keep it at least relatively short, although the video is probably gonna be like 30-40 minutes at the end. But profile is definitely a thing that you do want to try out, and here you just want to go through all of the different profiles. And what this will do is change the color as well as the shadows and highlights and pretty much everything in your picture. So it can really change your picture by quite a bit, so definitely be sure to play around with all of these different profiles. And at the end stick with whatever you like best. Once again, very different on every single picture, but I do like this camera standard here compared to the Adobe standards. It's definitely a lot more interesting. And yeah, I think I'm actually gonna stick there. And you might ask yourself, why not do this adjustment before any other adjustment since it has such a severe impact on the overall look of the picture? Well, you can do that, but as we see here from the raw file to the picture at the current state, it's such a different picture, and if you would just go to profile and play around with that at the very start, you might not have that good of an idea of the look of the rest of the adjustments combined with the profile. So pretty badly explained from me, but I hope you get the idea. At the end, it's definitely up to you whether you want to do this at the start, in the middle, or at the end, but I really like to do it at the end for myself. So I think we're finally done with the global adjustments, so now it's finally time for the local adjustments. And the local adjustments are quite important because there it's really where you can make your picture your own, make your picture truly unique. So the first thing I always like to do is go to the graduated filters and use them first wherever it's needed. So here the sky, I think it's just a bit too bright, so I'm just gonna add a graduated filter over the sky. and you just want to make sure that you have a very soft edge. Otherwise, if I, for example, go into the minus exposure here, you see it's very unnatural looking, and by getting a very soft edge, you make this look pretty natural. So I'm going into the minus exposure, although not quite as far. I really want to retrieve some of that brightness in the sky, but I'm also going to add some contrast, some clarity to really bring out all of the structure in the clouds. And depending on your photo, maybe if you have a very soft sunset or winter picture, you might even want to go into the minus clarity and minus contrast to, take away some of that structure in your clouds. But especially in stormy photos, in stormy clouds, it can really work quite well to go plus contrast and plus clarity. You can go even further, for example, bring up the highlights a bit, bring down the shadows, and get even more differentiation between the portions in the sky. But I'm not gonna do too much here, but you see from before that one graduated filter to after, it's already quite a bit of a difference. Maybe I just went a bit too much into the minus exposure. Then I'm gonna grab another graduated filter, this time just for the very top of the sky. And I'm also gonna bring down the exposure, just the exposure, nothing else. And that way you can really close out your picture. Works sometimes, doesn't work in some other cases. But here from before, you see it's just kind of open, so bright towards the top of the photo. And after that one graduated filter just for the very top, it really helps to remain your viewer's eye within the actual picture. You can also do that with the bottom, although it doesn't have that big of a difference compared to the sky, but maybe just a little bit works here as well. So before any graduated filters as of yet and after, you see it's just a lot more even over the entire picture. I often use graduated filters for additional vignetting on some large areas, but also on, for example, fixing the exposure when, for example, the sky is too bright. So I don't think there's really any other use for graduated filters in this particular photo. I'm just gonna go to the rail filter straight away. You can also go to the adjustment brush first, and this is pretty much just what I use to add a very large area adjustment over a part of the picture where the graduated filter just doesn't work. For example, if you would want to make the water brighter or whatever, the adjustment brush is a pretty good way to do that, although you would want to do this way more carefully than I do right here. But that said, I don't think there's any large area that I want to adjust, so let's go to the rail filter straight away. Dodge and burning is just making individual parts, so local adjustments pretty much on your picture to make stuff darker or brighter, which can really result in a lot of differentiation, in a lot of additional interest and complexification in terms of the lighting. If you want to learn more about dodge and burning, you can check the link in the description. There I have like a 30-minute in-depth tutorial about dodge and burning. But I'm gonna get started here with some plus exposure filters. Always want to make sure that you have your feather at 100, otherwise you're gonna end up with an adjustment like this, which of course doesn't look natural, so always want to make sure that you have the feather at 100. And I'm just gonna add some additional plus exposure over some parts of this picture where I think otherwise it would be a bit too dull. So maybe here a bit as well, maybe just a bit of a smaller one in the background. And the thing that you want to do is just plus exposure, never, for example, go over a very dark area and just go a ton into the plus exposure, because that will not look natural. Instead, just go over the already bright parts or the pretty neutral parts and add some additional exposure there. So right click duplicate, just drag it over another part. I really think there are gonna be quite a lot of opportunities for rail filters in this particular picture. It's just right click duplicate, maybe another one over here. And it's really, once you get the hang of it, it's quite easy to understand what works and what doesn't. but I'm just gonna show you the whole process since this is an in-depth edit. Don't think it makes any sense to cut out now. So in terms of plus exposure, you can also make multiple layers, maybe a smaller filter over a bigger one. But I'm just gonna finish that up here, maybe another one, quite a small one on this cliff right here. Right click duplicate, a smaller one over just this area. And you know, I think that does pretty much the job in terms of the plus exposure. As I always say, you can really go crazy with it, you can add a ton of them, you can even zoom in one-to-one, just add very small ones over some areas. But just for the sake of this video, I'm gonna keep everything relatively compact and easy. So here is before any plus exposure reel filters, and here is after, so quite a bit of additional interest, additional lighting. But what really makes it work is by also adding minus exposure rail filters in the middle over just some areas in your picture that are already kind of dark. For example, here, this rock should be theoretically in shadow, so I just want to exaggerate that a little bit more, so everything seems a bit more contrasty, a bit more punchy. And then of course, once again, just right click duplicate, maybe make a bit of a bigger one right here, just behind this rock to add some additional interest. And once again, additional differentiation from dark to shadow. That's really what this is all about, adding additional differentiation and additional complexification. Might not want to go quite as far into the minus exposure for this filter right here. Also make it quite a bit smaller, just like that. Right click duplicate, then just a very small one right here. Right click duplicate once again, another one over this area. And you know, once again, there are so many different possibilities that you can try out and really see for yourself what works and what doesn't. But I think in terms of the negative exposure, that does pretty much the job here. Actually, maybe I might add another one over just the bottom of this path right there. So yeah, in terms of negative exposure, I'm done here. Maybe I'm gonna go back to the plus exposure and just add some very small ones on top of some that I've added previously. Of course, with the feather to 100. Right click duplicate that one and just add some small filters over the picture before I say that I'm finally done. It's really starting to get way too long, this tutorial, but I wanted to make everything very in-depth and show you every single step from the very start to the very finished picture. I might actually want to make this area a bit darker to add even more differentiation. Once again, bring the feather to 100. It's really quite tough with dodge and burning because there's always an additional little spot that you can change. But I think that should work. So here's before any dodge and burning, and here's after. You see, it just adds a lot of dynamic, a lot of differentiation in the lighting, and it might seem like quite, maybe even overdone at first if you see the direct comparison from before to after. But if you haven't done it too much, after a while you will start to notice that it looks natural and that it really just adds additional interest. So a last time before any dodge and burning, and here is after. So this is the entire picture. I really don't think that there is anything else that I want to do here. Really nothing that I can think of. So let's just go into the history and scroll down the pretty long history and see where we start at with the raw file. And I mean, pretty much no comparison. Very dull, very flat. And to the picture at the end, really complex, very interesting. And once again, if you see the direct comparison, it might be a bit, or it might seem like almost overdone, but once you look at it for a while, it really starts to look organic and a lot more interesting than before. And don't forget to check out the link in the description to get your free SmugMug trial, where you can build your website, try out everything absolutely free for 14 days. And if you tried it out and like everything and would like to sign up for a paid plan, you also get 15% off any subscription. So thank you very much for watching this very long tutorial. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already for more videos just like this one, other Lightroom videos, landscape edits, and even some on-location landscape photography trips in the future. And you can of course share the video and give it a like if you want to do that. But I'm gonna sign out here. Thank you once again very much for watching, and I hope I'll see you all in the next episode. At the start, you see here, if we see